Well, hello everybody. This is just going to be probably a shorter video than normal, and you're probably saying to yourself, "Oh, thank goodness." I just wanted to take a second. I don't think I've ever done this, but I'm going to talk about this year's inductees, the 2025 inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, there's so much controversy around the Hall of Fame among real music fans. Not just people who like a few hits on the radio of stuff, but those of us who music is in us. Um, excuse me, because let's face it, they've strayed one so far away from rock and roll, which we're going to talk about here, and two, they have overlooked so many great artists in favor of putting in critical darlings or outright ignoring the fans' requests. Like for example, this year the jam band Fish, who has been around 40 years, they were actually nominated in the fan vote. They got more than twice the second place person, I think, or something close to it. Yet are they getting inducted? Nope. Fish isn't really my thing. They're like a more modern version of the Dead, and I like the Dead, but I don't. Whatever. I appreciate the musicianship, but the point is, if it was really the People's Hall, which I guess it's never really claimed to be, um, they would get in, and actually a few other of these people would not. And so I, for years now, have looked at it like this. If a band or artist I like gets in there, great. If they don't, no sweat off my back. The Hall is notorious for ignoring hard rock and heavy metal. Right now you have AC/DC, Metallica, Black Sabbath, um, and I can't really think of any other. Judas Priest got the Musical Excellence Award a couple of years ago. They weren't made. It's almost like you're good. We hear the people, but you've never been big with the voting hall members. I'm just going to outright call out that misogynist Jan Wenner for what it is. If he and his merry band of yahoos don't like you, you don't always get in. So anyway, I'm going to get to this. Enough sort of politicking and complaining. So there are four different categories, and I'm going to go through them, not quite how they're all listed. We're going to start with the Ahmet Ertegun Award. Ahmet Ertegun, one of the giants in the record industry, as an A&R man and a record label guy, and who actually did, for Atlantic Records, and he was the reason for the last Led Zeppelin reunion. Um, so anyway, he was actually a very good guy, and so they have an award named after him for basically record guys. Lenny Waronker is getting it. He was an A&R man for years and years and years. He helped with Warner Brothers and all that. I don't know a whole lot about his portfolio, and that's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and pontificate about artists or individuals I don't know a whole lot about on this. Um, but by all accounts, he didn't consider himself sort of the typical record man. He was more on the side of the artists and allowed artistic freedom. So good for him. The musical excellence, or the musical excellence award. Um, Tom Bell, who was a producer, he was a Jamaican fella, came up to Philadelphia when he was 4 years old, helped helped engineer the Philly sound of the 70s, the OJs, the Spinners, stuff like that. I don't know a whole lot about his work because that sort of music really, even as far as soul and R&B, that stuff really isn't in my wheelhouse. I appreciate it for what it is. Great musicianship, great vocal harmonies. And so um, it's great that one of the architects of that sound is getting recognized, not just some of the bands, but some of the people who actually helped create the sound. Nicky Hopkins, who I'm familiar with some of his work, he did a lot with the Rolling Stones, starting with their Satanic Majesty's Request all the way through, off and on. I believe through Tattoo You. And so he was on the big 72 tour for Exile on Main Street. And think about this, just as a quick sidetrack. Um, you had the Stones, arguably at one of their many peaks, but then they hired Bobby Keys on sax and Nicky Hopkins on piano. What a band! Holy crap! So anyway, good for Nicky Hopkins. Like I say, he was in a lot of classic rock stuff. He also played. He was in the Jeff Beck group. He even played with Jerry Garcia for a little while. So he was, really kind of all over the place. And then, my God, how this woman has not been in here from 30 years ago. She's in her 90s now. Carol Kay, who one of the most iconic bass players, yet unknown to so many people. Um, she was in. She was in the uh, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? The group of studio musicians in Los Angeles who played with, she did the California Girls. Um, she did California Girls for the Beach Boys, did a bunch of stuff with Brian Wilson. The Wrecking Crew. You guys have probably already thought of that. We're getting ready to type, hey, moron, it's the Wrecking Crew. She was part of one of the most loose yet stable musical ensembles in pop history. That woman could lay down a bass line, probably still can. Um, she should have been recognized for her contributions from the moment the hall opened its doors, really. So God bless her. I'm so glad she's getting in. She played with everybody, like I say, from the Beach Boys to Sinatra. She was on everything. And so, Carol Kay, I salute you. Long overdue. That actually, this one really means a lot um, to so many people. Uh, Now, the performers category, label this as a year of long overdue artists. And in some cases, I thought, aren't they already in there? And so we'll start right with Bad Company. Bad Company put its first album out 51 years ago, meaning they would have been eligible in 1999. And Paul Rogers, what a fantastic bluesy singer. The rest of the band, so iconic. Um, and I just, how Bad Company. I was a lot more into them when I was a teenager. I collected a bunch of their records, the first four or five. Um, and in some cases, they're just kind of meat and potatoes rock and roll, yet they were so good at what they did. You think of, I don't care if I never hear Feel Like Making Love Again. That's so overplayed, but right away, right out of the gate, the song Bad Company, just sinister and menacing. Shooting Star, Running with the Pack, Rock and Roll Fantasy, just on and on and on. And they really laid the foundation for a lot of the blues-based rock and roll that was going to come after it. So, 51 years after their debut album, why on, Mick Ralph, Simon Kirke, Boz Burrell, the other guys, everybody's good at their craft as Paul Rogers is as a singer. So, about damn time for Bad Company, I'll say that. Chubby Checker, I had a hits collection of his when I was first getting into music, when I was in probably second or third grade. And there's the twist, and let's twist again, and twist this and twist that, and oh, but there was the limbo rock too. Nothing wrong with Chubby Checker, but come on, where the hell is Motorhead in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Yet we're putting Chubby Checker in. Come on, give me a break. I normally don't slam people, and if you're a Chubby Checker fan, great. He was a good singer, extremely limited, and not necessarily in the best way. That's my opinion for what it's worth. Here, you talk about one of the most criminally overlooked artists, also would have been eligible in 98 or 99. How on earth is Joe Cocker not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? They put, thanks to a huge push from Elton John, they put Leon Russell in back in 2011, I think, right? Joe and Leon put on one of the greatest tours of all time, the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour. For that alone, Cocker should have been in. And those first few albums of his were just amazing. And when you think of Woodstock, you think of Hendrix, of course. You think of Santana with Soul Sacrifice. A couple other big names. But Joe Cocker's performance that day, the guy with that gruff Midlands, Sheffield, Steel Town voice could get up there and sing soul and blues music like almost nobody else. So the fact that Joe Cocker's just getting in now is a stain on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But thank goodness, even though he's been gone for a lot of years, thank goodness they're finally correcting it and honoring him. Um, you can tell I'm going in alphabetical order, by the way. Cyndi Lauper, I know, a few of the hits. I was really impressed. I don't remember if it was the late 90s, early 2000s. She did a blues album with the great harmonica player Charlie Musselwhite, and I think they might have even toured together. And so I like Cyndi Lauper from the little bit that I know. I don't know a whole lot, but she's written some great songs for both herself and other people. And, good for her. She was really groundbreaking. She didn't take crap off anybody, still doesn't take crap off anybody. Um, one of the innovators of pop music, definitely kicked down the door for a lot of women that came after her. So, you know, maybe she should have been under the musical influence category, which is the last one I'm going to talk about. You know why. Um, Outcast, the whole having hip hop thing in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't bother me as bad as it used to. But again, where's Iron Maiden? Where are some of these other great bands? Oh, Deep Purple is in for the hard rock category as well. I apologize because, of course, they were put in 20 years after they should have been. Um, where are a lot of the great rock and roll bands? A lot of the punk bands were more influential than these guys. Um, so Outcast, I my friends and I used to sing that song "Roses" to each other when it came out, 20 some odd years ago, because it was so ridiculous, but it was funny. Um, I have I have nothing against them. They're for what they are. I actually kind of like their music. Uh, I just think that there are so many other great rock and roll, and whether it's oldies, Britpop, hard rock, heavy metal, prog, whatever. There's so many other bands more deserving than putting rap artists in there. And again, it's nothing against the art form or the artists themselves. So I guess if you're going to put somebody in that started in the 90s for rap and hip hop, Outkast is not a terrible choice. Soundgarden, yes. I always thought they were more of they were part of the big grunge movement, of course, but I always thought they owed a lot more to the hard rock bands than, the classic metal bands. Than, you had grunge bands who owed a lot to Neil Young and the Stooges and stuff like that. But these guys owed more to, Sabbath and Priest and that kind of thing. Um, Chris Cornell's vocal range was out of this world. The music they put out was excellent. And so, you know what? I'm glad they're in. They came out at the time. Pearl Jam's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Nirvana's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How has it taken this many years to get Soundgarden in? That blows my mind that they are just now getting in. So well deserved to the band. Matt Cameron, right? So the drummer, he's already in with Pearl Jam. So, but he was in Soundgarden first. So, what? Yes, about time. And then these guys actually fared really, really low uh, on the fan voting, which kind of surprised me. Jack and Meg, the White Stripes, are getting in, and they put their first album out, what, 99? They started putting singles out before that. Um, it's funny. At one point, I had all their albums, and then when I hit some financial hard times a few years ago when I was selling off part of my record collection, I sold their studio records, but I kept the live albums. And I have since started uh, recollecting the White Stripes studio stuff. But it was really as a live band where they shone. And it was actually, I didn't get into them in the early 2000s when they were big at their commercial peak. Uh, all I ever knew was Seven Nation Army, like a lot of people. And I thought, oh, that's a good song, but okay. They were part of that garage rock resurgence of the time. Um, and then years ago, maybe as many, probably 9 years ago, 8 or 9, I went to my local record store, which was a corner record shop at the time, and the manager Pete was playing the BBC John Peel sessions. I didn't know it was them, but I walked in and I heard this really amped up version of Death Letter Blues. And I'm a big Son House fan. He's probably my favorite of all the old Delta blues guys. And I went, oh, I can tell what this is. And then I'm like, is that Jack White singing? So I had no idea the reverence that they had for the blues and what a huge deal they were in helping bring blues music uh, sort of to the forefront of rock and roll again. And so I bought that 2 record set. I went back the next day. It was the last one that they had in stock. And my mind was just like completely boggled. And so I'm really happy because Jack White is such an odd duck, but he's huge in promoting physical media, of course. The sort of commando style touring that he's done over the years has been great. The great Northern Lights. I haven't had enough coffee today. I've only had like 6 cups. And anyway, the live album they recorded in Canada, where it was sort of a drop-in tour as they went, is absolutely stunning. Um, and you know who I'm really happy for, even though who knows how she really feels about it, is Meg. Uh, because people gave, let's be blunt, people gave her a lot of shit back in the day for being very rudimentary. Meg White was a better drummer than most of the people out at the time. And I'm saying this not as a musician, as a fan, because her style, one, it was hard hitting. That girl could thump the drums. And she had a really good internal metronome. And almost like a Phil Rudd for AC/DC or Charlie Watts from the Stones, there wasn't a lot of flash, but man, she knew what to do. She was perfect for the music that they were doing. And, she was the reason the White Stripes sort of ceased to be as a living, breathing band. She had anxiety. She wanted to go back and just live a average life like the rest of us. And I can't blame her. But her contributions to music were phenomenal. And she probably won't show up. I doubt she will. Who knows if Jack will, because he's such a mercurial character. Um, but either way, I think the White Stripes deserve it. Are there other bands that from longer ago who should have been in? Yes. But at least the White Stripes was a really good, solid duo that put out killer music. Now, the Musical Influence Award. And I'm saving this till last. There are 2 artists. It's almost like saying, we're not going to make you full members, but you're close. And one is Salt and Pepper, the all-female hip-hop group, started in the 80s. And you know what? Again, I know 2 or 3 songs. I don't know much about them, but I know that they had a huge following. They were wildly successful. They still tour, on package tours for retro music and that kind of thing. And those tours sell out arenas all around the world. So there's still a taste for that. They were fun. They always seemed to be having a great time doing what they were doing. So good for them. Again, the whole hip hop thing, talked about it just a few minutes ago with Outkast, not going to rehash it. In that style of music, they're deserving for what it is. And then the last. I actually, you know what? I thought I was content to have just all the studio and official live stuff, and I have been on a binge buying compilations and unofficial albums and record store re-releases. This just came in the mail yesterday. I should have bought it years ago. But if I had, maybe I wouldn't have tracked down all the studio records. Warren Zevon put out his first album in '69. He disowned it. Pretty much everybody did. The seeds were there for what he would become. So he's been eligible since 1994. 31 years Warren could have gotten in. And he's been nominated a couple of times and shot down. And you know what? To whoever finally made the call, thank you. I've read so much about him. Nobody probably really knew him, other than his close inner circle. Fans certainly will never know all of Warren, but uh, this is. I'm actually getting emotional inside. I'm trying to control it because this is so deserved, so long overdue. Criminal that it's taken this long. But it's finally happening, even though Warren has been gone since September 7th, 2003. Uh, I hope his kids show up and take this. I would like to think, just as a fan and somebody who's studied both the man and the music tirelessly for years, uh, I think he might be amused by it with the whole idea of, we're going to put you in there, not quite all the way. We're going to give you access, but not a ton. And so, sorry, I'm seeing somebody walking around out out front of the house out here in the neighbor's yard. So anyway, I wanted to save this to last because I've spoken so much about Zevon on this channel. Every year I talk when I'm doing my Zevonathon. This year is going to have extra meaning because I'll be able to say Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Warren Zevon. You know, he had that brief bit with big stardom, and then by by a lot of his own choices, he burned a lot of bridges. And by the time he was back in the shape to, he never stopped making great music. But by the time he was putting out great albums again, he was on little indie labels. He wasn't getting the money that he deserved. He was playing, supper clubs and small theaters and whatnot. But his influence as a writer, I'm not even going to list all the people who've covered his songs. Just do yourself a favor and Google that. Um, Warren Warren Zevon finally, and I hope that they have the good sense because David Letterman, was the biggest friend to Warren's music that he ever had, and that was Warren saying that. Um, when Dave inducted Pearl Jam, he said, "I hope to be back someday inducting my friend Warren Zevon." You know, yeah. So I'm getting choked up because of everybody on this list. This one means the most to me as a fan. And again, I've talked. So many of these are great, but man, Warren finally getting some recognition means a lot to me and his diehard fan. So, and again, like I say, if an artist I don't or I like doesn't get in, oh well. But this one, for the first time in years, I'm incredibly grateful. So that's my take on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2025. Please list your comments down below. Um, obviously we could talk ad nauseum about who should be in there and who isn't yet. But let me know your thoughts about who's getting in this year and what you think about them. And I look forward to hearing from you and discussing with you. And take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.